morning, everyone. It is Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. We got a lot to talk about today, and I'm excited to get to introduce you to my fantastic panel of nerds. My name is Matthew Kadish. I am the producer of the Salty Nerd Podcast, the internet's #1 comedy podcast where we make fun of movies so you don't have to. And joining me this morning is my brother from another mother, Matt Vader, 74. How you doing, buddy?
You're really stretching it today. You're really exaggerating a little bit. I'm kind of broken right now, to be honest with you. I'm kind of broken.
Why are you broken?
Well, not only was it just an absolutely asinine week in pop culture news, but I just found out that I've been saying Galaga wrong for 45 years.
You just did it again.
Galaga. See, I can't do it. It's like Porkajol. I guess I'm broken. I don't know what to do with myself. I think I'm just going to turn my camera off and go back to bed.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Matt Vader can't pronounce Portugal. So if you watched our trailer before the stream started, you know this. But
Craig had to snap me in the behind the scenes. Say, "What'd you just call it?" Galaga. That's not right. It's Galaga. It's like, okay, whatever.
You're wrong.
I didn't mean to call you out. I'm sorry. I apologize. But at the same time, you're absolutely wrong.
It's okay.
And also joining us, as he does every Saturday, is our queer representation, Mr. Latinx himself, Brian from the Popcast. How you doing, buddy?
Howdy. Or should I say, hola.
And joining us for the first time is Stuttering Craig from the Side Scrollers podcast. Very excited to have you on the show finally, Craig. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, man. Well, thanks. I appreciate finally getting a chance to connect with you guys. Excited to talk about all the pop culture fun we've had this past week. So much to talk about. Yeah, so a lot of people probably know me as Stuttering Craig. I ran a pretty popular website back in the day called Screw Attack. The last 10 years, I've pretty much been just doing a bunch of nothing. That's really important. and now I've come back and I'm relaunching a podcast called Side Scrollers. It's going to launch in the middle of February, and really, really excited to be getting back in the game and talking about video games and stuff again. So
awesome.
Nice.
And the All-Father himself has graced us with his presence after taking last week off. Odin from OMB Reviews. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine. Yeah, my mom came in last weekend, so caused a little bit of disruption with the schedule, and then also had to have my member stream for January as well. But I'm happy to be back on the show, and it's always fun to hang out with you guys. And for anyone wondering if you see my hands moving around, I'm working on I do knotted rosaries, and so I'm just working on a knotted rosary. Well,
Odin, you missed Matt Vader hosting half the show last week.
That was awful. It was terrible. Don't ever.
That sounds like it's an amazing show.
You can never do that again.
I had technical difficulties, dropped out of the stream, and Vader it was like Garth having to host after Wayne got fired on Wayne's World. It was very entertaining.
It's one of those things where you don't know where to put your hands. You're just kind of what do I?
I was like, Brian, talk, say something. What? That noise you just made, Odin?
Yeah,
was like
they're like. Yeah, I'm actually very interested to hear from Brian this week because there was a lot of gay. This past week.
There was.
Yeah. We're allowed to talk about it because Brian is genderqueer.
That's right.
And non-binary and 3 different minorities, if I'm
and Latinx.
Yeah.
All combined into one.
Yeah, I'm all of them.
So like the fact that he's on the panel means that we can talk about anything and we don't have to worry about it.
It's the only reason I'm here. I'm like their shield.
Wait, was that even on the list? Are we talking about that?
Yeah, we're talking a little bit about it. So real quick, I want to give a shout out to everyone in chat. We got Anthony Mark. Good to see you, Anthony, as always. Danny the Dork Knight is in the chat. Master of the Shadow Dragons. Gavin Blackburn, our favorite super sticker contributor. Good to see you. Whiskey Jack, who came up with a great name for our Tuesday stream. Commander Cello is also here. Craig Daniels, Lobot. JS Pina. Good to see you, JS. Penny, Danny's mom, is also in the chat. And we've got Bruce and Stuttering Craig. Good to see you, Stuttering Craig.
There he is.
Just want to contribute.
I'm just glad Danny and his mom are both here because that's super cool.
Well, Danny's mom is always in the chat, stirring up trouble.
Danny's mom was cooler than Danny.
Yeah.
So.
Dang.
All right. So before we get going, I just want to remind everyone that we are accepting super chats throughout the show. And if you guys want to contribute, we will stop the conversation to highlight your super chat and talk about it. And real quick, we also want to point out that we've got some of our big time super chatters listed up here. So we got Bob Dorsey, who was our highest ever super chat. He holds that top spot for now. But also in the $100 club, we have Bob Dorsey, Scotty Dub, and the Astro Nerd Boy. These are all guys who have dropped $100 super chats on the show. We really appreciate that. And of course, Joker Voice and Fluffy Panda are some of our most consistent donators. And Backyard TARDIS, the guy who has been advocating to get Stirring Craig on the live stream for like months, he is our top super thanks contributor. So if you guys don't know, super thanks are kind of like super chats, but for just regular videos instead of live streams, you get a highlighted comment and stuff like that. And Backyard TARDIS has been very generous with that. So if you want to get your name up here, you got to dethrone him in terms of like how many super thanks he drops. But we want to thank everyone, no matter what you contribute. It's a big help to the show. As you know, we're starting up our own podcasting studio here in Vegas, and all that money helps kind of like support us in our endeavors. But I also want to give a special shout out to Scotty Dub, who has just been dropping money on us left and right. He is our top contributor right now, whether it's in live streams or commenting on our videos or in Discord, like whatever. He has been very active and very generous with both his time and his money. So Scotty Dub, thank you for being such a super fan. We really appreciate you.
In this case, Scotty Do.
Yes, Scotty Do. And as always, if you guys want to drop super chats throughout the course of the show, we will have them rolling up on a ticker down here. So we will acknowledge you. But before we get going to the main story, I want to talk a little Star Wars in terms of what Star Wars Celebration has in store for us as a panel this year. And I was following that Star Wars girl's Twitter, and she posted this fun little tweet for people who are blocked, which is pretty much everyone. So like, as you can see, her quote tweet from this guy, he basically just blocks pretty much everybody. But it says here, from that gay Jedi, I am humbled, grateful, and over the forest moons to announce that my Star Wars Celebration panel with these two guys, titled Star Wars is a Drag, Exploring Star Wars Through the Art of Drag, has been officially approved. Cry emoji, star emoji. We can't wait to share this with you all. And then the official synopsis here of this is, the long and rich history of drag has graced the world with entertainment, culture, political action, and so much more. It is no wonder then that today the art form has reached such a cultural significance that the truths and concepts of drag performance permeate countless aspects of our daily lives, including Star Wars. Some of Star Wars' very best characters embody various core principles of drag, whether it's Din Djarin drag as personal expression and self-discovery, Asajj Ventress's drag as queer rebellion, or Padme Amidala's drag as self-empowerment. The relevance of drag even spills out of the pages and screens of Star Wars and flows through the fandom itself through hobbies like cosplay. While taking an introductory look at the history and function of drag in our world today, let's also explore this thematic resonance and influential presence in everyone's favorite far, far away galaxy. Matt Vader 74, thoughts?
Not for me. Don't really care anymore. All this stuff is just kind of broken me as far as many fandoms go. None of this stuff was ever supposed to be part of this stuff like these people think it is. And if they want to think it is, I guess that's fine for them. It's just it's not for me. I have no interest in this, and it kind of soils the legacy of the world of Star Wars for me. I don't understand why they have to just inject this stuff into literally everything. And I'm not going to go. I wasn't going to go to Star Wars Celebration, and I certainly wouldn't buy a ticket to this panel if I was going. So I think I'll just leave it at that, because I don't care. I'm just sick of this stuff being injected into all of our fun things, our pop culture.
Right.
It's nonsense. So if they have to, go ahead.
So Brian, being the queer representative on the panel that you are, it's kind of interesting that it feels like they're conflating drag with cosplay, because cosplay has been a part of Star Wars for a long time. And they don't really define what drag is. So, like, I don't remember Din Djarin being in drag. I don't remember Padme Amidala being in drag. And drag is basically, in terms of what I understand it to be, a member of one gender dressing up as a member of the opposite gender.
That's what it is, yeah.
And so, how exactly does this translate to Star Wars, in your opinion?
No, yeah, you're right. It does. It really doesn't. But we've seen this before, like this sort of like co-opting of history and just saying that this has always been this way and we're celebrating the way it is. Remember Star Trek? I mean, the LGBT people that identify as LGBT make up like, what is it, like 3 to 5% of the population. Yet somehow on all the latest Star Trek Star Trek shows, Star Trek conventions, Star Trek days, First Contact Day, etc. It's like 8 to 10, 8 out of 10 of the actors, 8 out of 10 of the presenters, 80% of everything represented is LGBT.
There's rainbow flags everywhere at Star Trek.
The logo is now the official Star Trek logo is now just a rainbow. Okay.
Yep.
They co-opted it, and then when people push back and said, "I don't understand why everything is so gay," and that's no pun intended, like literally, everything is so literally gay. They said, "Well, that's how Star Trek's always been," and now we're seeing it in real time. This already happened with Star Trek, and now we're seeing Star Wars in real time do the same exact thing. They're taking over it, and they're going to take over it to the point until we have a lightsaber that is like 15 colors. Okay. And they're going to be spinning around. And then, in like 10 years, there's going to be some, Luke Skywalker prequel where, him
and Wedge are going to have an experimental encounter.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Behind the schoolhouse.
The whole X squadron is just like banging in the bathhouse or something. This is going to happen. And if you want a clear roadmap, it's already happened. Yeah. It happened with Star Trek. Like, it's never been a part. I have been a Star Wars fan since I was born the year the second movie came out. I have been watching those movies my entire life. That was never a part of it. I've been watching Star Trek my entire life. It was never a part of it. Yes, there was progressive elements to it. Fine. And if they read into that by watching some of these episodes of television or movies, that's completely fine. Do what, read into whatever you want. But to do this, like, retroactive change to history and say this is what it's always been like, and then to co-opt the entire brand, it's suicide. Because again, 3 to 5% of the population is gay. The rest of the people, either don't care, and there's a small percentage that really hate them. Well, the healthy percentage of people don't care, which means it's not going to be for them. So you can start making content that is not for 95% of your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a small percentage of that's like, well, I'll pretend to like it. Eventually they'll stop liking it too. And then it will die, like every franchise does.
So, Craig, we don't want to get too political about this, but you can't really talk about it without getting a little bit. And Disney has been under fire, especially in the state of Florida lately, about evidence that's come out where you've actually had executives at Disney talking about their secret gay agenda in order to influence children to be more inclusive or accepting or like transitory. And it seems like, now that Lucasfilm is part of Disney, this kind of philosophy is permeating Star Wars, even though you could say, well, if you don't like the panel, you don't have to go to the panel. People can dress up as any character they want, whether it's male or female, all this other stuff. What do you think is the outcry behind this? Is it just people being intolerant, or is it people who are just tired of political agendas permeating their fantasy escapism?
Right. So I actually have a few questions about this. Right. I've seen each Star Wars movie like once. right? And I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, right? And I watched The Mandalorian. I enjoyed it, right? The first season, I thought it was really good. I haven't watched anything after the first season. And I know that the Star Wars fandom is very split right now. So a couple questions. This Star Wars celebration, is this an official Star Wars event?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's an official Star Wars event.
It's their yearly convention for Star Wars.
Okay, so I went through and I was looking at the bios for these characters. The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, I guess that's his real name.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking through on Wikipedia, which I would imagine is like the official Star Wars style, as close to official as you can get, I guess. And I don't see anything about, I mean, I did a search. I didn't see anything about drag listed anywhere in it at all. And then I did the same for Asajj Ventress. What the other one that's
Asajj Ventress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went through and I looked for drag in there. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, she's a Clone Wars character.
Okay, so but either way, the word drag isn't included once in this. So I don't understand how they can say, well, it's always been represented this way. Well, clearly it's not even a point of interest in the main bio for these characters. So I think that it's I've got a couple kids, and the one thing that I have from I would say woke friends who have kind of either like these people are not coming after your kids. They're not coming after your kids, and I would say, have you watched TV? Have you watched TV in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
Right.
And because it's literally everywhere. Like I was walking into a Dick's Sporting Goods with my 10-year-old daughter, and she goes, "Dad, what's with all the rainbow flags? Why are they everywhere?" Like, this is not me pointing this out. This is my daughter being like, "Why? How come these things? How come it's everywhere? They're literally everywhere." And they're in Target, they're in Dick's Sporting Goods, they're on TV, they're on the and I had to explain to her, like what it is. And I'll say this, like I pride myself on having a community that is extremely inclusive. I don't care how you think, I don't care how you live. I really don't. As long as you don't tell me how I should live. It's very simple. And I think that's where a lot of parents are having issues with this, right? The idea that they feel like they're being told how to raise their kids, or this is the way that things should be, right? And it's like, well, who are you to tell me that about giving life lessons to my children? Like, I'm going to teach my kids to be tolerant and to be accepting to all, right? But and everyone can celebrate however they see fit, but it just seems it seems overkill, and I think that's the thing that I think a lot of parents feel is like it just feels too much.
It's overkill, and it's out of place in these fandoms, So,
like I said, I have no issues with how anybody wants to live their life. You want to live their life, fine, awesome, please. I encourage it, right? Absolutely, you do you, and that's fine. Just don't tell me I should live mine. That's it, And it's like, could you imagine if flip the situation, right? And let's say there was a drag show, right? And it was a drag convention, and somebody came in and they were, I don't know, like pick the most masculine potentially thing you can do, and they went in to that space. It would feel out of place, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of feels out of place. But then they would go, well, no, it's always been that way.
If a gay bar had a straight day or whatever,
right?
Straight parade,
and then the bar goes, no, it's always been that way. No, it's always been that way. Right. And people are like, no, it's never been that way. Are you kidding me?
I look at it like this. What's kind of happened is this is just a hypothetical. For example, Disney buys Nintendo. Just hypothetically, Disney goes out and buys Nintendo, and they go, okay, we're going to release a brand new classic console, and we're going to put all the Mario games back in it. We're going to redo the Mario games. And you go back and you start playing the Mario games, and all of a sudden Luigi is hitting on Mario, Princess Peach is a purple-haired fembot, and all the Bowser's big goal in the world is to make everybody wear dresses when they don't want to. It's just,
hold up, Bowser is clearly a dom. Okay.
Whatever, but and that's what happened. That's what's happened to Star Wars. It's just could you imagine if like Luigi and Mario were a couple?
Well,
you know,
there's entire websites
that's
dedicated.
That's what
to that,
happened.
Peter.
That's what's happened, and it's crazy.
Well, I think
So,
the bigger
Real,
thing,
especially with them being brothers. I mean,
Right, but they wouldn't care. They would just make it so that they were like stepbrothers and weren't really related or something. You know,
I think that the thing for me,
well, one's John Leguizamo, right? So.
yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me is the idea that when you if let's just say they did that, right, and they totally changed everything, but then they're like, no, that's how it's always been.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's the thing. It's like they're
Gaslighting.
It's total gaslighting. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that everyone's looking at and be like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you talking about? You can't just say like, this is how it's always been. It's clearly not ever been like that.
Like, hey, shut your mouth, bigot. It's always been this way.
Right.
Princess Peach is clearly trans sensitive with her outlandish dresses and clothes that she wears. You know,
Very obvious.
Very, very clear.
So real quick, before we get to Odin, we got 2 super chats. One from Whiskey Jack. I'll handle it later. One from Whiskey Jack for £2. X-Wing, one night on Dagobah. I'm ready, baby. Smiley face. And then from our $100 club member, the Astro Nerd Boy, for $5. I guess Wikipedia got tired of banning folks as they've not blocked me yet for calling them bigots.
Oh yeah, the whole Wikipedia thing. Yeah, that's
adding pronouns.
Yeah, I don't know. Craig's aware of this, but a couple days ago, Wikipedia came out on Twitter and stated that they were adding pronouns to everybody's character bio in the Star Wars characters.
What a waste of time.
Yeah, so
some poor
like,
bastard sitting there
and
updating
their evidence,
thousands of characters.
My favorite thing though is their evidence is, well, look at this one line where the person says he. They've been using pronouns forever, and I'm like, that's not the same thing as what you're implying with the pronoun part of your bio.
How do you pronoun geode? Remember the big rock who's a navigator?
Yeah.
Could you imagine like Darth Vader entering the room? He's like, my name is Darth Vader. Him. It's like, at the end of The Mandalorian, like Luke comes in, like busting everybody's face with his lightsabers, and he comes out and takes a little Grogu, and he's like, that's Luke Skywalker. Him, let's go. Like
well, apparently it's they for some reason for Luke.
Is it really?
Right? That's what I saw in the entry. I was like, wait, explain that one to me.
You see, I called it before I even knew that was happening. They're gonna do like this retroactive change of history, and he's gonna be something. He's gonna be something.
They're like insta blocking anybody who like says anything to him about it. It's really fun.
That's wild, dude.
So I want to get Odin's take on this because Odin, we've actually had like video evidence of the program executives at Disney coming out. This one woman in particular, I forget her name, but she's like, my 8-year-old is trans, my 5-year-old is pansexual. We have a secret gay agenda that we're layering into our children's programming. And this is one of the reasons why Disney keeps getting, slammed on the political front, because parents don't feel like they don't want their children indoctrinated. They want to be in control of what their children, see and experience. And but with Star Wars, like nobody's in the fandom, I think, is truly bigoted. Like they're not saying like, oh, if you're gay, you can't like Star Wars. But it feels like there's this constant agenda, like you had in Rise of Skywalker, the lesbian kiss that got cut out in territories that have laws against being gay and stuff like that, China and the Middle East in particular. And so Disney's more than willing to kowtow to them, but when it comes to American audiences and stuff like that, they feel like they need to force it upon you. And we're actually going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to The Last of Us. But I want Odin's take on this.
Well, because they don't have cultural power in those other locations. They do have cultural power here, and that's really all that it comes down to. They have been able to infiltrate these seats of power so that they can have the influences they have. I mean, when you think about it, how is it that you have giant corporations that bow to the whims of really, honestly, what only seems like a very few people in a Twitter mob? Clearly, it shows that it's not the numbers of the people in the mob. They must have people behind the scenes that are a part of these giant corporations that are willing to kowtow because they actually buy into said agenda, or the very least that they've been able to get into certain cultural institutions that make it seem like it is a much bigger number than it actually is. Going to that one woman, though, who mentions her own children, I'm just going to go right and say it that I think is a complete and utter example of child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a young child being told, oh, no, like if you're thinking this way, oh, that means you're pansexual, or this means you're that, or this means you're this, because a child cannot possibly, one, completely understand what that even means, let alone make a decision to understand and to identify themselves as such.
Right?
Unless they are told by someone else. And so that, I think, is a clear-cut case of child abuse. And honestly, I just that kind of those kinds of things disgust me. I'm all for people and parents having, the ability to raise their children, but then there's a point to me where it's like, I think that you are going and stepping a bit too far in all of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it also comes down to really, people don't like to use the term, or now this term is being attacked, right? But really, it's also an example of grooming as well, right? It's like trying to normalize. It's trying to say, oh no, like this has always been a part of Star Wars, right? Gaslighting. But really what it's about is trying to normalize it, because ultimately when it comes down to it, they cannot create in a wide variety of ways, whether it's their cultural or whether it's their pop cultural stances, right? You can't create new shows. I mean, look what happens when they try to create. They get Bros, it fails because no one wants to go see it. And so they recognize if we make anything our own, it's not going to work. But instead, if we take over these other big mainstream names and then we infiltrate and then we put our own ideas in there, well, then it might actually get some people. And I know that's going to come up with The Last of Us, but literally it's like, hey, we're going to trick people to watch something in order to try to push through a certain political ideology and a certain,
because there's not enough people,
ideology.
Odin. There's not enough people. There's not enough people to make money off, to be successful with Bros.
Yep.
There's not enough people that actually want to watch it. So
yep. And since many of the cases that we're talking about here and many of the couples that we're talking about here can't actually have their own children, they will have yours, as is often said.
I just want to remind you guys that our good friend John Campia said, if you use the word agenda, you're the ones that have the agenda. If you bring in the word agenda, did I say it wrong, John Campia?
You're just mispronouncing everything today, man.
Whatever.
Campia,
but, Campia, whatever. I don't care.
He's also one that was like, well, if I'm an SJW, you're saying I'm an SJW. I don't see how that's a bad thing. I see I'm a social justice warrior. That's a good thing. You're like, that's a boomer, man. It's crazy.
I apparently don't know how to speak today, so whatever. I'll take my Galaga and my Campias and my Porkajals, and I will go get some breakfast or something. But anyway, Matthew.
Yes. All right, guys. So let's shift gears here and talk about how Frosk has come out recently, told her side of the G-Force story, and claims that she was unfairly maligned in terms of the downfall of the network. Now, I'm going to share with you guys an article. By the way, everyone on the panel's links to their channels and all the articles we reference in the show are linked in the description. So if you guys actually want to go out and read these yourselves, please feel free to. Over on Clownfish TV, we have this really long, in-depth article from writer Peter Pischke, who actually reached out to me on Twitter when he saw that we were going to be featuring it on our live stream.
Really?
And said that if he ever wants to, if we ever want him to come on and talk about this, he's more than happy to. So shout out to Peter. I'd recommend everyone go not only read this article, but he also, this article was taken from a live stream he did with Frosk. It was a one-on-one interview type thing. I will say that Clownfish probably needs to invest in a couple copy editors because this is a terribly written article. It's got a lot of misspellings, and just so you know, when you're doing transcripts, you are allowed to editorialize them a bit to make them read better instead of leaving in all the likes and ums and all that good stuff. But that's just me being
I think they were just trying to make her sound as dumb as possible, because I that's what I took out of that.
It's more authentic.
Yeah.
Yes. But this article basically kind of breaks down the highlights of the stream, which is quite long. I believe it's like 2 hours long or something like that. And you can get it here. But one of the interesting things about this is that Frosk basically said that, the sexism in gaming rant was planned. And when they did it, she did not want G4 to like clip it and make it big, but I guess like the executives decided to blast this out everywhere and make a thing out of it, thinking that no publicity is bad publicity. But she said that in addition to like this hate happening because of that rant, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, which she kind of spilled the tea on, was that G4 was just basically a mess in terms of like the upper management. And because of that, that's what really led to its downfall. It wasn't necessarily anything that she said necessarily. And one of the interesting things about this interview is that she's not apologetic for the rant. She's like, I believe everything I said in that rant, but it's not what led to the downfall of G4. And so she's not really doing any mea culpas or apologizing for what she said. She's just basically saying like, hey, I'm getting the blame for something that wasn't my fault, even though I'm pretty sure that this whole thing was a big contributor to that, because it alienated pretty much all the demographics that they were trying to court for the channel. So Odin, I want to start with you on this. Did you have time to read the article and watch the interview?
I did not, but just hearing that one part about just the fact that she said, well, it wasn't my decision, and I actually, wasn't supportive of them, clipping it, and I'd had no knowledge of that. It basically is saying, yes, I said the words. Yes, I meant every single thing that I said. But it's not my fault that it got the attention that it did, because I'm not the one who clipped it and put it out there. And so if we're going to blame anyone for the downfall of G4, it can't be me, because yes, I said the words, but I didn't put it out there and clip it and make it easily accessible. Like, that's just, again, the type of just such myopic thinking that someone like her would actually have, which has led to not only the downfall of her own career, but also, let's just be honest here, I agree, and I think that there's some insight to be said that there are clear exactly that there are some clearly problems behind the scenes that also definitely contributed to the downfall of G4. But for her to try and act like it has nothing to do with her and that everything else is fine, it basically, to me, that sounds like she's admitting, well, the words I said may have had an impact, but it's not my fault that the words got out there.
Here's her exact quote. So the interviewer asked her, did they understand what kind of fallout was going to come your way from the rant? And Frost said, no, absolutely not. If they had asked me, I would have been like, do not clip that. Did I mean everything I said? Yeah, but it's in a context of like, I know that only 2,000 people are watching that particular live stream, and I can look directly at the Twitch chat. If they clip it, they put it obviously like G4 rides like the high of like I said, this is a terrible transcription.
I can't even follow along with you.
The internal of one's really good job that stands behind you, and then as soon as the backlash comes and it gets caught up in the YouTube algorithm, then obviously all the harassment comes and G4 just hard bails, and they're like, we really are supporting you, but like from way over here. So she feels like she was kind of like hung out to dry on this after G4 orchestrated the rant, put it out there, and then permeated it across social media.
Gee, I wonder why. Because it was an unpopular take that happened to get publicity. And so basically she was told how unpopular that take was, and yet she's going to blame the other people who clipped it and put it out there when it's still her words that resulted in this. It's again, it's not the fact that they clipped it, it's the fact that she said it, and she said the words that she said, and it's an unpopular take, and a really bad take to boot.
They probably could have gone on for another 12 months if she hadn't, spouted all this out.
I don't know about that, though.
So Craig, one of the interesting things in this article, like she talks about how the reboot of G4 was actually Olivia Munn's idea. She was dating the guy who eventually like rebooted this thing at the time, and then they broke up, and he kind of stole her idea to reboot this to kind of like, I guess, stick it to her. And one of the things that Frost said was that every time the talent would come up with ideas for the show or suggestions to make it better and stuff like that, they would run it up the Comcast ladder, and they'd get a rejection back, but they never knew who was rejecting it, who was the shot caller, why the final decision was made that way. So like, it was kind of like this nebulous cabal of executives that were nameless and faceless, and no one knew who to appeal to. And so the running of the G4 channel was essentially rudderless. And because of that, the talent was restricted in what they were allowed to do. And they had no idea what they really should be doing in order to help the channel. So, what's your take on this whole thing?
I have so much to say about this. Can I just take the next 90 minutes to talk about this? I mean, because there's so much here. It's ridiculous. Absolutely insane. Okay. So just to be clear, she wrote it. She said it, right? They were her words out of her mouth, and she believed those words. But she only believed them if there was taken in a live context. Now, if you clip it, I don't believe it that much, right? Because this is not a good thing. I believe it all the way up until you clipping it, then probably not. Okay. By the way, it's not my fault. The one question I would have consistent that the interviewer did not ask, and I think is the biggest question that needs to be asked, is why can you not accept responsibility? Because if you look, I'm a data-driven guy. And if you look at the data specifically behind the date of her rant, right? The idea of this is when it happened. And then immediately after that, literally the next month, you see a nosedive into the ground, right? So it doesn't matter what middle management is saying you can and cannot do. The number one rule is don't alienate your audience. Don't do that. So it doesn't matter if you have a crazy idea for a game show. It doesn't matter what you think you can do to bring in the audience if they don't like you. And they clearly didn't like her. And that's the biggest issue with all this, is she can't look in the mirror and say like, yeah, those were my words. I said them. I stand by them. Now, was my tone right? No, my tone wasn't right. I think that's the biggest thing is her argument of like, look, there's issues in the gaming space, right? Cool. Name them, right? Because she goes on in the interview talking about, there's some clips or the video in particular where she's like, even in this studio, talking about the G4 studio, I've seen things. Cool. What have you seen? You can't just be so vague about it. What have you seen? Because what you're doing right there is you're putting a spotlight on, let's just say there's 30 people working there and 15 of them are dudes. So 1, 2, I don't know, somewhere in that group, was it Adam Sessler? Was it the completionist? Was it the other guy clapping? Like was it the guy said, tell it to him, Frost? Like, who was it? Because what you're doing is now you start looking at the dudes in there and say, someone in there is causing issues. Who is it? And it adds more speculation, and you're throwing more people under the bus. So if you can't just throw out vague accusations, you need to be specific about it. And that's one thing that she hasn't done. Oh, I've seen things. What? By who? Be specific about it, because if they're that egregious, they need to be called out on. They should be.
Why do people always do that? Why do they always say that here's a massive problem in this space, but then they won't name names?
Right. There's always, because they don't want to point the finger back at themselves. And that's what's happening with Frosk, right? Once again, why can you not accept responsibility? Because it doesn't matter. The amazing ideas that middle management may or may not have signed off on, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're the presentator. You're the one presenting everything, right? You're the one who's writing the script, coming out in your words. And you're the one being extremely aggressive at the audience, telling them that if they don't like it, peace, right? Get out of here, which is insane. So I think that this is a wonderful example of the lack of accountability for their actions. This is, I mean, literally a multi-million-dollar mistake. G4 was going to fail. I mean, I think everybody who saw it when it was launched was like, yeah, that's a really stupid idea, right? I think some people hoped it would work. I mean, having gaming on TV seems like a really great thing, but at the same time, gaming's everywhere for everybody right now, constantly on your phone. You can get whatever you want instantly. And I think people hoped G4 would work, but it never had a chance. All Frost did was pour gasoline on a fire that was just burnt it to the ground faster than it could possibly happen.
Yeah, she was the accelerant, dude.
And anybody who says otherwise, including Frosk, is wrong. It doesn't matter what was going on behind the scenes. It does not matter. The data shows that she's the one that nosedived it.
And one of the weird revelations that Frosk made was that there was a lot of internal competition between like X-Play and the G4 people, where they were basically actively sabotaging each other and like competing for viewers, even though like they're on the same network. It was really kind of interesting. But Brian, since you are the queer representation on the panel, I wanted to to bring up this idea of sexism in gaming, which is what got Frosk in like the hot water, as always. Now, we've had a long history of this concept trying to gain traction in the gaming world, where, you know, you had the bully hunters thing, and you had like a lot of game journalists and Anita Sarkeesian and all this stuff, who've basically been trying to come into the gaming space and tell the primary demographic, which is young men, that they're wrong for liking attractive women. And you know, you mentioned Star Trek earlier about how, like, you know, the gay population's like 3% of like the entire population. And when it comes to gaming, female gamers, even though they exist, are a very small portion of that demographic who tend to game like religiously and things of that nature. And so this idea that you have Frosk come on the show, whose primary demographic is like 99% like young men, and starts lecturing them about finding Olivia Munn attractive and stuff like that, it's going to be a big turnoff. Why do you think they keep trying to push this feminist agenda in a industry that clearly doesn't respond well to it?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. You see, you said, we mentioned Star Trek before, and now Star Wars, and how they slowly take over that industry, and they do this revisionist history, and they say this is how it's always been, right? The same exact thing has been happening with gaming for like 20 years. Gaming, though, because its primary demographic, and when I say primary, I'm talking about 98% demographic, is young men or immature men, whatever you want to call it, people that are so resistant to change that we have a built-in antibody system against the franchise takeover. Gaming is such a resistant space, unlike Star Wars, unlike Star Trek, unlike other franchises, Hogwarts or whatever it's called, that for years they've been trying to take over this space. And it's not just, you know, the LGBT or women or whatever, it's control. I'm gonna say left, because I have no other word for it. They want control over the space, over whatever popular space there is, so that they can support an agenda, right? And unfortunately for them, gaming is very hard to take over, because either gamers don't care and they move on to the next thing and they just let it die, or they fight back with such a passion. It's like Mongolian raiders coming over the Chinese, the Great Wall of China. They don't play when it comes to their favorite games. When Frost went on that rant, I do believe that when she says, like, well, they shouldn't have clipped it because it was out of context, it was for specifically these 2,000 people watching in the chat people. Again, the article was very poorly written, but I think what she was trying to say was, the people in the chat were, and I hate that I have to defend Frosk right now, because I can't stand this personality. She's like everything I dislike about games. She's a League of Legends caster, and I'm a Dota 2 guy. So you lose me there, and we probably disagree on everything politically. And she attempted to throw shade at my waifu, Olivia Munn. So I don't like her at all. However, when she said the context of the chat, I think she was referring to the fact that she was like being lambasted by all the gamers in the chat. Which, if you go on a gaming show, or if you're casting on Twitch on a gaming show, and you know your primary audience is people like us, like these like guys hiding behind keyboards, just like throwing everything out there to be as offensive or as hilarious as possible. You can't go on these shows and then get offended that you went into a space full of vitriol, and then you were treated with vitriol. Welcome to gaming, guys. I don't know if anyone here plays online, plays like multiplayer. I play actual matches of Dota or Counter-Strike, or even COD, or even Fortnite. Like, you name it, Rust. When I go into these spaces, I'm expecting to be screamed at by a 12-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
I am expecting
100%.
to get into a shouting match with someone my age. I'm expecting someone to curse at me. I'm expecting to be called racist things because they assume I'm expecting it. This is online gaming. There is no holding back. People yell at each other, they scream at each other, and then they're bros the second the match is over and they won. Right? That's gaming.
Mm-hmm.
So you go into that space as a host, and then you get mad at the chat when the chat is pressing F for Frosk, and you get mad. And one thing about that is she goes, well, this rant was planned, but then also this rant was only for the context of the chat. So in my mind, I think that they had previous streams where people were giving her a hard time, and it was probably stated in a meeting. All right, next time the chat starts going after Frosk, you can just attack back, and it'll be a cool viral moment. And she probably did that. I'm gonna attack back because the chat is calling me a dyke and calling me ugly and all this stuff. She went after she did it wrong, clearly, and instead of G4 letting it die there, she is right. They amplified the crap out of it because they thought, no, all publicity is good publicity. And then it started to die. But to her defense again, it was already dying because they didn't know what they wanted. They were trying to make like this general gaming show. Guys, I don't follow all games. I follow 3 games. So if you're talking about games I don't follow, I don't care. That's why it's really very hard to corporatize the gaming space, because it's hundreds of games and millions of fans that follow games from month to month. They don't necessarily always follow the same game too. That's where it changes. So in some of that article, she's actually very right. She's also not taking responsibility. And even if they planned for the chat for her to go off when the chat went off, that doesn't mean she did it right. She clearly did it wrong.
She also kept doubling down on it over and over.
She did. She doubled down.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a sec. But you know what's interesting about the gaming world is that it's basically like the same as sports. Like when you have dudes playing sports, you can't come in there and be like, "Hey, Mr. Football player, don't tackle that guy. That's too violent." Whenever there's an aspect of competition involved, people get competitive because they want to win, and that makes them more aggressive. And so like when you have women come into the space and they're like just naturally like not as aggressive as men are, and they get bowled over by this competitiveness and like the male urge to like win and dominate, they can't handle it. So they try to change it. And in the gaming space in particular, because it's faceless and there's such a broad variety of men in the space, that it's basically you can't change it. And so like if you call it out, you're just going to get slammed down. Vader, do you think that Frosk is that it's unfair to be criticizing Frosk for this, or did she deserve every bit of criticism she got?
She deserves every single bit of it. She never did anything but double down on social media and everything for all of the words that she said, and she got what she deserved, as far as I'm concerned. She went on this rant, whether it was written for her or not, and she sunk the ship. And what they think was going to happen. It's a bizarre thing to me. And there's no doubt that G4 was a sinking ship anyway, but she definitely was the torpedo that sunk it at the end. And she has she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Her trying to offset the blame is just laughable and funny to me. I do want to say though, really quick, I think you guys' numbers are wrong. I think there's far more than 2 to 5% of the world's gamers are women. I think I've been looking up things. I think it's more like closer to 40 to 45% these days. But
depends on the game, I guess.
No, I said 2 to 5% are LGBT. Yeah, but case in point, real quick, you mentioned real sports, like no offense to esports, but like real football, sports. Right? Well, what was like a year or two ago when they announced that, and the NFL, they said football is gay, and they had this big campaign where they're like, football is trans, football is this, football is gay. What were they trying to do there? Like, do they have a large fan base?
No.
No, they don't. They just want to take over whatever's popular.
It's all about inclusivity and people trying to. They want them all to acknowledge that they exist. It's like, okay, we acknowledge you exist. There are gay people in the world. There are trans people in the world. Nobody cares, guys.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Get over yourselves. Get over yourselves and quit
I guess their mindset
push your shit.
Is similar to, because I feel like that's how it's been for the halftime show forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is whoever they have at the halftime show, it's never for the people actually watching the game. It's for the people that don't watch football. It's meant to be like, oh, let's get all of the eyes of the people who aren't watching the game, while the people who are watching the game are going to go off and make their food and do whatever. So that way we can at least keep our ratings up, and so that we can continue, So my guess is that their thought was, oh, well, let's go ahead and reach out to an audience that otherwise doesn't care about us, and maybe we can get a couple of things from it. But it ends up, I think, in that case, more so backfiring because of the cultural moment that we are in currently.
What I'm getting a kick out of, right, and this has nothing to do with Frosk, but just a little side note. They're trying to do this in the NHL right now, in the hockey world.
Oh, good luck with that, boys.
You talk about a fan base that wants nothing to do with rainbows in their world. It's the NHL hockey world, but that's another subject. It's just kind of funny.
I am not gay.
I'll say this, we so when we were growing up, but a couple things, just bullet points really quick. Yeah, so you hear the stat all the time about, I hear there's these statistics that go out and say, well, 50% of the gaming audience is female, right? That's the word, that's what like the ESA throws out there, the Entertainment Software Association, right? And that may be true if you're counting games on your iPhone, right? Your puzzle games and stuff.
Right.
But I think when most people think of gamers, they think
Candy
of
Crush.
people. Right, exactly. You're including Candy Crush, or all the puzzle games and things like that. But when you think of somebody actually going in and turning on a PlayStation 5 or booting up something on their PC, I would love to see the demographics on that, how skewed that is. And yes, there are female gamers. There's a lot of female gamers, but it's not 50% by any means.
No.
I wouldn't even say it's 40%. And I think the bigger, I was actually having a conversation about this the other day about where we've gotten is, from it. I'm all about, like I said, I don't care how you live. Just don't tell me how to do it. Just don't tell me how I should live. And I think where everything kind of started getting skewed was when we were growing up, the words that are being tossed around so much, racist, homophobic, things like that. The term racist meant like you were a part of the KKK. You were a bad person, right? Like
you were wearing a white sheet on the weekend,
right? It meant something. Right. And that was the last thing you wanted to be labeled. Right. Like that's the worst thing. I had no interest in that. Right. And that meant something. So when those words started being thrown out on the internet, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where it's like, you're this, you're ist, you're a phobe, whatever. And people were like, whoa. And it was alarming to a lot of people. They took a step back, like, what are you talking about? They got defensive. Oh, no. What? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. You can absolutely, appear in this show or whatever, so it took a lot of people back. And now at this point, those words, and this is going to sound really bad, but these words have lost meaning. It's almost like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, to where every single time, if I don't agree with you, hey, I don't like pasta. Oh, really? Or do you not like Italian people? And are you a, you know what I mean? Like everything gets taken so far so quickly that it's all lost all meaning. And I think it's definitely, my generation who's been making these decisions, these 30s to 50-year-old people who are in these like executive roles, who grew up with these words meaning something and having the finger pointed at them. And they have their finger pointed at them now, and they're like, no, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And now the old slippery slope. It's down the hill, and that's kind of where we're at. And I think if I was to guess, I would think that's my theory on how things have gotten to where they are. But I don't know.
So I want to put this open to the panel before we move on to our next topic. So one of the things that Craig just said was very interesting is that like female gamers are the ones who count, on the mobile games. But when you look at competitive gaming, where you have like, these streamers who enter tournaments or like, they're on Twitch trying to jockey for viewers and stuff like that. If you're a dude, you have to be really good at the game in order to gain a following. Like you have to be like top notch. And so like women can't really compete at that level. Most women can't. So like when it comes to being a girl in a competitive gaming space, you just have to be pretty, and you can like, just play the game and be bad at it. But because guys like to look at pretty girls, they're going to tune into your stream. And the few girls who are both pretty and good at the game, I mean, that's extremely rare. And those girls tend to be like, like me for my skills as opposed to my looks. But the vast majority of women in the streaming game just rely on their looks, because that's the thing that gets them the super chats and the donations and stuff like that. And so this idea that men are sexist in gaming because these bimbos are on their stream, like simping, like training them to be simps. It's kind of this weird dichotomy here where it's basically like you have an entire industry of women taking advantage of men because that's the primary demographic in this gaming. So I just want to open it up to the panel. What do you guys think about that?
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
I think you're going to bring down the wrath of all the people out there on us on this one. But you go down here in Las Vegas, right, where we live, Matthew, and you drive down there on my way to work, and I see no less than 15 different gentlemen's clubs. How many of them have dudes in them? None of them. Guys like to look at hot women. It's the nature of the beast. And you're absolutely correct. Women have a leg up when it comes to this whole streaming world if you're semi-attractive and willing to put yourself out there, because we're all a bunch of weirdos who like to, shell it out when they're shaking their moneymaker. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And it's just how it is, and they have an advantage. This week I'm learning on our own stuff here on the podcast. We put out some shorts. If a short has Jude's face on it, it gets immediately thousands of likes and thousands of views. If it has my ugly ass bearded face on it, it gets about 12.
Right.
And it could be the exact same thing.
Right.
It could be the exact same short, but depending on whose face is on that cover, it's going to do way different. And it's the whole Twitch streaming world is the same thing. And it's very frustrating because, there's a lot of us out there that work hard at this stuff, and we're never going to get traction just because we're this. Then that's just the way it is. Then there's other guys like Craig who has some personality. He's a good looking dude. He's got some charisma, and he's also awesome at what he does. And so his channels rightfully do well. And it's such a weird world out there. So I don't know.
Let me say this. And thank you very much for the compliments.
Yeah.
Listen,
he was actually hitting on you, Craig.
Yeah, you're a good looking guy.
Hey, next time in Vegas, I'm going to be super stoked on that beard.
Are you on footfinder.com?
I'll say this. If you were to go to Twitch right now, which I'm on right now, and I'm looking at the just chatting area, right? Mm-hmm. And you scroll down and you see, if you look at just the general viewership on these streams that are built around, I even have a VTuber up. The VTuber, what do they have? Cleavage, right? Mm-hmm. Cleavage. They're in tight outfits. They're doing yoga. They're just chatting with next to nothing on, right? I refute. Like I say this as the father of an 8 and 10-year-old daughters, right? I'm going to teach them to be modest, right, with their body, to honor their body, right, to know that it is not something that should ever be given away. And this is something that when you see, with all that said, I refuse to believe that over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that men just decided they didn't like boobs.
Right.
I refuse it, and you know what? That's the reality of the situation. That's just the cold, hard facts, right?
It's sad. It's sad. And I could agree with that. But, because like people will say like, well, is that how it should be? It's like, well, no, I think that's a very sad thing that, people.
But that's how it's always been.
again, in fact, that's reality, right? People are drawn to it. It's become commodified. That's where I get more of the issue is the commodification, because it's people being used as objects. But at the same time, it's a natural part of both men and women to certain degrees, right? To be attracted in these various ways.
But you guys know what's funny is, like, if you look at what Craig was just talking about, the just chatting section on Twitch, these girls who are just wearing like very skimpy clothing and being pretty and interacting with chat. If you look at Olivia Munn back in the day on G4, dressing up in French maid outfits and Wonder Woman cosplay and stuff like that, that's exactly what she was doing back then. And that's what Frosk was criticizing us about. It's like, Olivia Munn does not exist to be easy on the eyes for you. It's like, no, that was her job. She's been that's how she became famous.
That was her literal job.
And now girls are doing that every day in the just chatting section on Twitch, you know? So like, how are you going to criticize us for something that is blatantly untrue?
Well, once again, there's an entire, it got so bad on Twitch, so bad that they had to split off an entire section for pools, hot tubs, and beaches.
Oh my God.
Like, and you know what's not in any of the, let's see, I'm scrolling as I scroll down. Yes. You know what? There's not a single dude in the beaches, hot tubs, and pools area.
There's a hole in the market, Vader. Let's get in the hot tub, bro. Let's go. You and I, we get in the hot tub, we show our cleavage, and we just talk.
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, boys?
Hey, what's up, bro? How's it going?
Hey, let me go over here.
Welcome to my hot tub. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Nice. There you go. That's what I'm
Brian,
talking about.
what are you doing?
Hey, Brian, if you were to fart, you could capture it in a jar and sell it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
ASMR.
Let me get back here and talk to my top supporter. Oh. There's always a whiteboard behind them, right?
I think I was done with Twitch the night that I sat here and I watched this South Korean girl in her 90 sit here and eat rice. And every time somebody would drop a dime on her, she would giggle. It was just like, what are you doing? It's ridiculous, but whatever.
It's really kinks. It's the commodification of kinks.
Yeah,
that's what Twitch has really become, and it's disgusting, I think.
Hey, we got a couple super chats we need to go back. We should probably get a couple of these done really quick. I'll do this. Gavin Blackburn, thank you. 99 cent pound or euro. Is that what that is? That's super sticker. Thank you, sir. Whiskey Jack, $2 with another little squiggly thing next to it. Another pound. Get bent, stutter. Her truth. Talking about Frosk.
That's right.
And down here, I'm gonna roll along here. And here we go. From our dude, the Astro Nerd Boy, for $10. My nieces and nephews are all gamers. However, the games the boys like and the games the girls like are very different. I think Minecraft is the only crossover they all like together. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And what do they do in Minecraft are probably different.
Probably.
Because Minecraft has the creative element, and then it also has the one where you can, live on your own and, build and fight, etc.
Minecraft is very inclusive. And speaking of Minecraft, let's talk about Mr. Beast. So Mr. Beast was recently attacked by some weirdos who didn't like the fact that he was helping people cure their blindness. We have an article here from Forbes, which used to be a good publication. It's garbage now. And this was written by a senior contributor named Danny De Placido, who basically just writes garbage. But this whole thing, for those of you who don't know, so Mr. Beast, like he has his very kind of like clickbaity videos that everyone loves. But he recently put out a video where he cured the blindness of like thousands of people. And it was stuff like a cataract surgery and stuff like that, so that people who couldn't see out of their own eyes could suddenly see again. And in this actually created like a weird backlash. So here in the Forbes article, it says, Mr. Beast's habit of showering strangers with cash for content has long been a bit of a joke on Twitter, because his charitable acts tend to conceal an uncomfortable truth under the shiny surface. The fact that these videos are created primarily for clout and profit imbue them with a dark undertone, especially when young fans view them as acts of messianic empathy. After all, one can't always depend on the kindness of YouTubers. Essentially, Mr. Beast's videos are much like those feel-good news stories that hide a bleak reality at their core, like stories of children raising money to pay their parents' medical bills, or teachers having to go to extreme lengths to provide basic classroom supplies, dystopian acts of desperation framed as inspirational and empowering. Mr. Beast's curing blindness video, labeled with a particularly distasteful thumbnail, really emphasized the fact that his simple, life-changing medical procedure has become content because of the fact that it is inaccessible to those who need it. This led to some Twitter users voicing their discomfort, even labeling the video demonic and mocking Mr. Beast. And then we actually had a YouTuber named Hassan Piker who came out, and he said that Mr. Beast's curing blindness video, and so political streamer Hassan Piker watched Mr. Beast's curing blindness video on Twitch and stated that watching it made him filled with rage. Piker went on to explain, "We shut off access to a 10-minute procedure because we paywalled it and decided that some people simply can't get it." Piker continued to express his frustration, stating that it shouldn't be up to one YouTube guy to provide surgery to people who are too poor to afford it themselves. Piker responded to this question about criticizing Mr. Beast by saying, "Plenty of capitalist nations have decided that healthcare shouldn't be paywalled. Unfortunately, the wealthiest nation on earth ain't one of them." The subjects of Mr. Beast's video are surely blessed by his interventions, but the concern is that many of the children who watch his videos are absorbing a particular ideology, that the only way to change the world is to get incredibly rich, throw some of that cash in the right direction, and make sure there's a camera pointing your way. There's something pretty bleak about that. And then Mr. Beast came out in response to all this criticism and said, "Twitter, rich people should help others with their money. Me, okay, I'll use my money to help people, and I promise to give away all my money before I die, every single penny. Twitter, Mr. Beast is bad." So, the criticism being leveled at Mr. Beast for this video just boggles my mind. Let's start with you, Craig. What's your take on this? Do you think that the criticism is accurate and deserved, or do you think these people are way off base?
What do you think? I think I'll tell you what, man. I actually just included, the Hassan guy. I know he's like a really big dude on Twitch, right? So I just, he's really upset about the paywall being put up for the eye surgery. And hey, I get it, right? Listen, I wish everybody could live comfortably.
You mean the medical bill that you have to pay for your procedure? So that's the paywall?
All I did was search Hassan Piker paywall, and I found a clip there. I don't know if you can play it or not, but the long and short of it is that just about 6 months ago, Hassan Piker set up a paywall for his audience to view some of his stuff as well. So, I mean, I think there's so much I could talk about Hassan Piker and just the idea that, hey, listen, there's issues in the world. I wish everybody could absolutely view things great and not be blind, right? It's an issue in the world, right? Now, Mr. Beast didn't cause that issue. He's helping 1,000 people, right? Now, a lot of questions here, obviously. Number one, I think you're insane if you think that there's issues with a guy helping 1,000 people. Like, there are people who do really bad things. There are rich people who do really, really bad things with their money. And if you got a guy who's like, hey, I just want to help people and I'm going to help 1,000 people, I don't see a negative drawback to it. Now, if you want to talk about the politics and all the other aspects of it, that's fine. But Mr. Beast getting guff over the idea of I'm going to help 1,000 people and not just change their life, but change their family's life is insane. I personally think that if Hassan Piker has such an issue with paywalls being put up, he should absolutely remove monetization on his channel on Twitch and no longer have any sort of paywalls for his audience. Yeah, they're voluntary paywalls, but hey, you know what? Just saying, like, make all your emotes available for everybody for free. Otherwise, you're just a giant hypocrite.
Right? Yeah, you can't complain about it and then live in it. Come on, man.
Capitalism's evil, but I'm going to benefit from it.
Right.
What do you think Hassan Piker's net worth is?
A lot more than mine.
Well, let me just do it. I like going to the net worth. So he's worth about $4 or $5 million, right? So
but capitalism bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He could probably cure a few people of their blindness with that money, right?
Right. People that criticize these philanthropists that are not actually doing anything themselves. It's almost the same thing as like the criticism of people complaining about like the immigrants coming into Florida, but you live so far away in upstate New York that you don't actually see any of it. You have no issue with it. Like you're not affected by it.
Well, I think that's my biggest issue with a lot of this is people say, well, you're part of the problem. And my answer is always, well, what have you done to be a part of the solution?
Exactly.
And it's just, you mean complain? You complain a lot? Great. It sounds awesome.
Imagine if he used his platform and the money that he does have to push for a campaign for people to call the representatives to push for legislation to move money away from places that are, that most people can come together on and say that's stupid, and instead towards things like this. That would be more impactful than just whining and complaining about some individual person using their excess wealth to help other people.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I think Hassan Piker's point was that healthcare should be a right and should be free. It's the typical socialist mentality of like, well, everyone should pay for everyone else's healthcare. People shouldn't be denied these life-changing procedures. And what he was really criticizing was the fact that a rich YouTuber had to step in order to help these people when they should have just had access to it for free to begin with. And, you can get into like the debate over like the economics of, single payer healthcare and all that other stuff. But I think that the biggest thing that stood out to me in this Forbes article was that if you want to affect change, the solution is to get rich and then throw money in a particular direction. It's like, well, isn't that how change always happens? It's like you can't be poor and make sweeping social changes. Like you need to have money behind you in some way, shape, or form. Odin, what do you think about that?
Also, too, like you worded it in the way that I'm glad that you did, because it's that wording that always drives me nuts when they say healthcare should be a right. I'm sorry, but there's a difference between healthcare and healthcare insurance. They are not the same thing. If we're going to talk about healthcare being a right, I would actually probably agree in most instances, right? And in fact, most hospitals agree with you. If someone comes in and they're unconscious and they've got bullet holes in them, they're not going to say, oh, do you have insurance so that we can save your life? No, they're going to save your life because it is ingrained in our system that you have a right to be able to be protected. But let's say right after the fact, you do have to pay for the services rendered. That's when health insurance comes into play. So we can talk about, right, what does it mean to have a just healthcare insurance system, but the whole talk about, healthcare must be a right, that to me is just, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a red herring, because it's ignoring the actual issue, which is insurance, not actual healthcare.
Yeah, and you also have to argue, like, do you have the right to another person's labor?
Yeah,
because at that point it's just slavery.
Yep.
So like healthcare isn't just about you getting access to a product; it's about you getting access to someone's labor, and whether or not that person is justly compensated for that labor. So it gets really complicated. Brian from the Popcast, do you think that the criticisms levied against Mr. Beast here, in that he's perpetuating this like culture that's indoctrinating kids into thinking that altruism is just as good as you can get celebrity from it? Do you think that that's a legitimate argument?
No, I do not. I think that him showing kids that it's good to do good for other people is a pretty basic thing to teach children. Criticizing him for using his excess wealth to do good things for the world is just insane. And listen, I have two 10-year-olds, and I'm constantly trying to monitor what they're watching between TikTok and YouTube shorts. It's very difficult. But I never have a problem with them watching Mr. Beast. I think Mr. Beast, for the most part, is always saying pretty good stuff. He's his entire. I think he's a good dude, and I don't know if it's just a stick or what, but I think that he does some genuine good for people, and all of his videos, even if they're nuts, have a really good feel to them. Like they have a good vibe. Talk about the wrong person to criticize. It just doesn't make any sense. I think
Mr. Beast has done way more positive for the world at 24 than Hassan Piker has done at 31.
Yeah, Hassan Piker's done. I don't think he's done anything positive. Everything,
Right.
everything that comes out of that guy's mouth is just negative.
And we didn't point out the fact that in this video where Mr. Beast cures blindness, he's also giving individuals like $50,000 to go to college and stuff. Like he's just giving them
a Tesla to one
grants and stuff. Yeah. So
right.
Like he's not just curing blindness; he's being like extremely generous. And I think that his response, where it was like Twitter, rich people should do stuff with their money, and then Mr. Beast is like, okay, I'm going to do stuff with my money, and then everyone's like Mr. Beast is bad. Just doesn't make any sense. Matt Vader, what's your take on this? We know Mr. Beast is like the most successful YouTuber on the planet right now. Do you think that these attacks are warranted?
No, of course they're not warranted. I think they're just maybe they stem from a little bit of jealousy because Mr. Beast gets so much press and attention with these stunts that he pulls. I mean, how many guys out there are going to go buy a $200,000 house or whatever and then sell it to the first guy that walks in for $1 after putting a for sale sign out front? I think his channel is pretty cool. I'm not super familiar with him. I'm not going to lie. I do not watch him a whole lot, but I think anytime somebody can afford to fix people's blindness just out of, their kindness or whatever, and make it if they're making a movie about it or a YouTube video, then so be it. There's a lot of other YouTube channels out there that have a lot of people doing a lot of stupid stuff, and this guy's at least doing some good with the money that he's doing. You know what I mean? The prank channels are one thing, but this is next level, just giving back to people. Mm-hmm. And I have no issue with it. As far as the healthcare things go, man, that's a sticky slope. I struggle with that so hard because I don't feel like somebody should be able to, like, for example, you get diagnosed with cancer and then you get cured and then you get hammered with an $80,000 hospital bill that you can't pay. That sucks. And then you're in debt for the rest of your life or whatever. But I don't get healthcare. And mm-hmm. It's just, it's a hard, sticky slope. I mean, what are you supposed to do? It's like, oh, just let me die. I'm not going to be able to pay $100,000.
Yeah, it's a whole
cancer bill. It's crazy. Not something I really want to go down right now. But I don't really know how I feel. But as far as Mr. Beast goes, let the guy do what he does. Yeah. Because Mr. Beast does some good stuff, and if he wants to spend his money that way, let him do it. More power.
There's something to be said for doing something and not looking for fame or not looking for attention. Like I think that there's legitimate good to that, but then also at the same time, but there's also good to someone showing, hey, here's what you can do. He's maybe getting other people to emulate what he's just done.
He's making money from his fame and doing good things with it and making more money to turn it around and do more cool things.
Yep.
It's a cycle
and hopefully inspiring other people with wealth who are not already doing that to maybe start doing it themselves.
Absolutely.
So speaking of charitable donations, we have 2 more super chats to get to.
Yes, we do.
3 more.
3. Let me roll the scroll up here. Scotty Dub, go ahead.
Scotty Dub, one of our top contributors for 1999. Apologies for my tardiness and not joining the live chat today, but wanted to give the salty nerds my weekly dose of fiscal love before resuming a screening of the 76 King Kong with my youngest, Kadish Vader 2024. I like how I'm at the top of the ticket there, Matt. So.
Listen, that's fine with me. That's okay.
You can be my Kamala Harris.
Our weekly fiscal love. Do we just need to start sending them an invoice every Saturday morning?
Can I be the Secretary of Housing and Development?
No, Scotty, you need to be the Secretary of Transportation. You need to be the Pete Buttigieg.
Yes,
that's what you need to be.
I'll be Buttigieg.
All right, Mexican Iron Man for $5. Guys that spend money on chicks online, whether OnlyFans or gaming thoughts or similar, fuel the simp epidemic. This is true.
This is very true, and we don't care.
Did you guys see that Matt Walsh video yesterday about how AI generated porn is killing OnlyFans?
Oh no!
All the AI art and video products that are coming out are being used to generate like porn with people's faces who aren't like actual porn stars.
Is that like this kid that was crying?
It's crazy. Yeah, that's the guy.
Like,
that's the guy. So there's this streamer. There's a streamer who was caught looking at AI generated porn with the faces of famous like Twitch streamers on it. Yeah. And his wife, who's a cosplayer, was on stream with him, and she was in the background crying as he was making his apology video. It was very bizarre. But a lot of people are saying that with the advent of AI video creation and art and stuff like that, that pretty soon AI is going to be.
Wait a second. You're telling me that you can take this gorgeous face and slap it on Ron Jeremy's body?
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And that could
I'm not telling you could. I'm telling you I already have.
Say, Vader, you can slap that on Tommy Lee's body. Let's go.
Oh, God. Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. We got one more super chat from Astro Nerd Boy for $5, member of the $100 Club. What's worse is some folks are offended that curing blindness suggests that being blind is bad. I doubt there's a blind person who would agree. Well, I mean, being blind isn't bad from like a point of view of like you're an inferior person for being blind, but I'm sure the people who are blind would prefer to see.
I think that the 1,000 people that he offered it to, I'm sure they weren't like, no, I'd rather not be able to not see.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Beast.
And let's be clear, this wasn't like you were blind your entire life and the surgery fixed your sight. It was like glaucoma. It was like stuff that like you could like people were able to see
10-minute surgery. Yeah.
And then
stuff
like
that people could fix.
Yeah. And then like because of this condition, they had lost their sight, and so now they can see again. So like it's kind of different in that respect.
I will say this. I did a podcast probably 6-7 years ago, and we would cover like silly stories and such. And this story always sat with me because if I was to go back and look, this is where society started to turn. There was a young lady who wanted to be blind, so she put acid in her eyes because she wanted to be blind so bad. And this was like a 21, 22-year-old girl, and she dripped this acid in her eyes because she just felt like she needed to be blind. Now, I would love to catch up with this girl today and be like, hey, was it worth it? Do you feel like you belong now? Because there's always the weirdos out there.
It sounds like a form of dysphoria, though, because there are people who, for instance, they'll look at themselves and say, I shouldn't have this arm, and they will cut it off. And again, broader discussion there about some of the other things we're talking about earlier that I think are relevant.
Yes.
So speaking of relevant topics, to get even more political here, let's talk about The Last of Us and this recent interview with the director who talked about tricking audiences into accepting a gay romance in the 3rd episode of the hit HBO series. So this article comes to us from Rebel News, and basically the Last of Us director wanted to trick the audience into enjoying a gay love story. The director of episode 3, Peter Hoare, recently sat down with The Independent in an interview, and he said that he wanted to trick his audience into watching a gay love story. Hoare, who is known for his work on the groundbreaking British LGBT plus series It's a Sin, said that he wanted viewers to understand that it was the same love as between heterosexual people. Sometimes you have to sort of trick the world into watching these things before they're like, oh my God, it was just 2 guys. I just realized. Hoare told Inverse, I think they might understand that it's all real. It's just the same love. But the response to this has been that it's not about the gay story. It's about the fact that they spent an entire episode in a zombie apocalypse action series with a very boring subplot that had no impact on the overarching story to begin with. One reviewer wrote on Rotten Tomatoes, if episode 3 was about a heterosexual couple, fans would still be bored and disappointed. Horror said he sought to subvert expectations. There's that, made for a modern audience type thing, and show that the same romantic love can exist between two men and audiences would accept it. I don't think audiences have a hard time accepting gay relationships nowadays. I think audiences have a hard time feeling like out of a 10-episode series, you're going to spend an entire hour on a sub-story that actually doesn't play into the main story. Like you could literally have cut out that entire flashback and taken the beginning and end of that episode, and you wouldn't have missed out on anything.
Yeah.
Right.
From the game
So
story.
Yeah. So Matt Vader, what's your take on this?
He Ryan Johnson dust is what he did. He subverted our expectations. He tricked us with 2 really good episodes at the start of this thing, and through this inserted this thing into the show just strictly for Hollywood points, I guess. I don't know what the word is, but it was not necessary. It wasn't needed. It's like I'm not going to sit here and bash the actress. I thought the episode was actually very well acted. It was fine.
Awesome.
It was fine for what it was, but what it wasn't was something that was moving the story and the plot along. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. I don't like being tricked into watching something I'm not interested in. I don't think I'm even going to bother watching the show anymore because, I mean, let's be real here for a second. This game series goes to a place that gets super weird, and I think we were all just kind of hoping it would be good from the get-go, so we gave it a shot, and it was good. And then he tricked us into watching a gay romance movie, and now I don't want to. So I think I'm done. I think I'm done watching. So I'm going to move on.
Vader, you don't want to rub our beards together?
Oh, I totally rub my beards together with you, man. Okay. I asked Kadish if he wanted to dock our beards, but he wouldn't do it. So
Avatar style.
Yeah.
No. Brian, you are queer representation here on the panel. And, one of the things that struck me when watching this episode is how awkward Nick Offerman looked in any of the intimate scenes, that he had to play. Because, he's Ron Swanson. He's obviously not a gay man, but he's playing this character who in the games, it was kind of subtly hinted at that he might be gay, but it wasn't really, he was kind of on his own by that point. And the producers of the show decided to make this little subplot into a whole thing. Nick Druckmann, the guy who wrote and directed the games, is
Neil
Druckmann is a very big SJW, and he's very big on pushing the gay agenda. What's your take on this episode? Do you think that it successfully tricked audiences, or do you think there's going to be a backlash on it?
There might be a backlash, but I actually thought the episode was really well done. Was it necessary? Absolutely not. It didn't. It had no bearing on the story, really at all. But I think Nick Offerman is an outstanding actor, and it was really funny because at the very beginning, where he's under the stairs and he's like, "Yeah, you jackboots," I'm like, "Ron Swanson survived the apocalypse. Makes sense." Because he basically played Ron Swanson. He played a gay Ron Swanson, right? The thing is it was really, so this is how it started for me. I'm like, okay, this is sort of cool. It's Ron Swanson surviving the Last of Us apocalypse. All right, cool. And then it got really gay really quick. It was there was no lead up. It was just boom, gay sex, boom, right away. So that was uncomfortable for me. I didn't want to see that.
You wanted to be romanced.
Right. I need you to buy me flowers.
Do some foreplay. Yeah.
Don't expect, I'm not a whore. I don't just jump into bed.
Even though I basically do.
And then, even though he basically does. Well, but then by the end of it, though, I did like the episode as a standalone episode, even though the gay sex made me uncomfortable. But overall, I did think the episode itself was actually really well done, even though it had no bearing on the story whatsoever. And as a fan of Last of Us, I think because you made this standalone episode, now we can't use this awesome character and we can't see his interactions with the other characters. And it was a mistake. You have Nick Offerman playing this role that was pretty much perfect, and you wasted him in this standalone episode. So for me, it's less about the gay stuff, even though it made me really uncomfortable at the beginning. I do think that it was very well acted and it was a very good story by itself. I think that the loss of that awesome character is going to hurt the show more than any controversy about that character being gay. And lastly, having played the game, I didn't know he was gay. I swear to God, I thought that was his brother or something. When I played the game, I superimposed that character as me and Shane surviving the apocalypse.
Oh, that just made it really weird, dude.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I told Shane. I'm like,
weird.
Shane, that's me and you surviving the apocalypse.
Oh,
and
boy.
now we're touching beards together. It's weird. It's weird. But the biggest problem for me is not the uncomfortable hairy bear man love, but more so the fact that the show is going to suffer because you had a character that was cast perfectly, played by a wonderful actor that everyone loves, and you threw him away for one episode. For one episode to probably push an idea that most people didn't need to know.
So, Craig, we've got these kind of Hollywood memes nowadays where it's like made for updated for modern audiences, subverted expectations, stuff like that, which is all basically code for Hollywood making propaganda, essentially, instead of entertainment. And, I watched the interview with Craig Mazdan, I believe, who's the executive producer on this, and he did Chernobyl, which was an excellent show. But politically, he's been very open with his far left politics. He hates Trump and all this other stuff. So he's not shy about sharing his political point of view and stuff like that, which the fact that he's such a good storyteller, is quite a dangerous combination. But when you have a situation where a director who's known for his LGBTQ British series comes in to handle this episode, and specifically his goal is to trick audiences into accepting a queer love story. Do you think that that's fair to the audiences? Should there have been some build up to this? Should the audiences have known right up front that this is what they were getting?
Well, I mean, look, I think, when it comes to, gay love, I like I said, I don't care. You love who you love, whatever. But at the same time, the issue I have is when somebody said, if you look at this quote, sometimes you have to sort of trick the world into watching these things. Just saying, if you're going to trick an audience, that doesn't impose a whole lot of trust. It doesn't allow a whole lot of trust moving forward. When you say, hey, gotcha, by the way, you better have liked it. That, it doesn't bode well moving ahead. And like I said, I have no problem at all with any sort of love, as long as it's organic to the show. If it makes sense to whatever type of media it is. But if it's shoehorned in, it's like, hey, gotcha. Nobody likes to be got. Nobody likes to be got. So especially afterwards, he's like, well, we tricked you good, didn't we? And by the way, it's still love. And it's like, yeah, of course it is. Of course, why would it not be love? But that's where just the word trick as a whole, and especially so close after the episode. If you would have waited, I don't know, a year or something, and be like, I tricked everybody really good, didn't I? Because but yeah, this is just more of the same. It's much of the same, where somebody wants to put in their agenda into something, and they feel like they're forwarding their cause into someone else's story, and that's what we see here. No matter the company these days, and it goes back to, let's say somebody was if someone was to say, hey, do you think that's really necessary to be in the show? He'd go, what are you, a bigot? And they'd go, no, that's a great, and their butthole gets all tensed up, and I don't know what you're talking about. So for lack of a better word, they have everybody by the gnats. So these people, when I say they, I mean these people in the positions who are these showrunners, because once again, it goes back to words. People are scared of being called words.
What do you mean they?
Right, exactly. And I need to be really clear with that because I know someone's going to clip it and be like, Craig said they. What does they mean?
Do you mean they, them? Is that what you mean? So Odin, spoilers for the people who haven't played the games, but it's very clear that by The Last of Us Part 2, Druckmann decided to really go full gay. So like Ellie comes out as a lesbian. You've got a character who's kind of like a trans character in it. Who plays like a very prominent role, and men are constantly bashed, sometimes quite literally in the game. So like there is this not so secret gay agenda in this story. And do you think that just like bringing that out like by episode 3 in the season is just a way to prepare people for like what's to come? Or do you think that there was more like a political motivation behind it?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of like one of my initial thoughts when I realized where the direction of this episode was going, because even when they say coming on this season, they at one point implied, because I can't remember, was it in Last of Us 2 or was it in like a DLC for 1 where it's her going off to the mall and getting into the relationship with the girl and realizing that she's attracted to women or something like that?
I believe it's the second game.
Okay, yeah, because I couldn't remember for sure whether that was, but I remember in the previews for this season they imply that was actually going to happen in this season, based on, again, at least the way in which the characters were interacting, and it made it seem that way. But the thing that really frustrates me about this episode is that it starts off and it's awesome. Like the beginning of the episode is so good, and had the episode just been about him surviving during this time, right, fighting off different things, helping maybe helping people along the way, and then getting close to them over the course of the episode, I think that would have been compelling. But instead, it gets turned into this really sappy romance. And as people have said before, that's not what you really want. I mean, because even think about the relationship between Tess and Joel. We know that there's a relationship there, but no one actually wants to see that play out, because that's not what people are really watching the show for. So for him to come out and say, yeah, I did this on purpose to try and trick people into watching a gay romance, and then the immediate response, of course, is everyone saying, oh, it's one of the best episodes on television. Oh, it's one of the best things ever. And immediately my mind went to this, was that this episode actually existed for 2 reasons. Not just to trick the audience into seeing this, right? To once again try to normalize things, right? And in a way, it's part of that grooming aspect of saying, look, they're just like everything else. This is actually about Emmys, to be honest. I don't think, I disagree. I don't think this is going to ruin the show story-wise. It might ruin the show story-wise. It might turn a lot of people off story-wise. But you know what that show just did this episode? Guaranteed this one will get nominated for writing at the Emmys. This episode specifically. The director, the Nick Offerman, will get nominated for an Emmy as well. This was made specifically to try to win the much broader culture war.
Yeah.
Yes, to get the award bait, to be able to get so that way this episode will continue to be talked about for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, not by fans, but by the elites and by people in Hollywood and all those other things. Because even if they lose some of their audience because of this episode, they're going to still have that cultural backing. Because the other thing too is that you think about this episode and you think, if this show was being run by someone with wrongthink in anything else, like let's say maybe in the LGBTQ AI plus P whatever, like they were not, maybe they were a what's the term that they use often for J.K. Rowling, a TERF, right, trans exclusionary, if that was their mindset, they would be going after the show, because you have first Nick Offerman, not a gay actor, playing a gay character, so they would go after that immediately, because they've gone after that in other things before, right? Also, too, he admits that he's only ever been with a woman. So he's actually a straight character. So they're also kind of implying, oh, so you can just become gay? Now, they might try to say, well, he's just been bisexual all along, and then that's what it really comes down to. Yeah. But, I mean, again, there are things that they could have all gone after and basically try to say the story wasn't as good. But because everyone has right think involved with this project, it's getting glorified to no one, to no one's end. And I think that we have to actually pay attention to that, because that to me is the bigger story, not the self-contained story within this, but rather what they're trying to use this to try to then bring out into the broader world. Real
quick, we got a super chat we need to get to From Denny Wright for $19.99. Thank you so much, Denny. Pet peeve: the deterioration and subversion of the word subvert in entertainment. Subversion has a negative connotation used in overthrowing an institution. What they hopefully want to do is surprise the audience. Yeah, I think we can thank Ryan Johnson for ruining the word subvert.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a thing. All right, we got
Jamie,
one
thank you so
more.
much.
Yes, we got one more topic that we're going to hit really quick before we get out of here, and that is my biggest fan, James Mangold, and the rumor that he's going to be directing the recently announced DC Universe Swamp Thing movie. So those of you who follow the Salty Nerd podcast know that James Mangold loves me personally. I live rent-free in his head. He loves my take on Indiana Jones. And so I want to give him a spotlight in this episode, where basically he's finishing up Indiana Jones right now, and then next on his plate he has a Bob Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet. And
did I say Charlemagne? It's Chalamet. Timothy Charlemagne.
Apparently, Mr. Mangold.
Maybe I take too many Quaaludes.
Apparently, Mr. Mangold has been circling a Swamp Thing movie for some time because he's a big fan of the character. And now that James Gunn has announced that they're doing a Swamp Thing movie, he's heard this through the grapevine, and DC is kind of extending an olive branch towards Mr. Mangold to come in and do his take on Swamp Thing. And so despite the fact that, we've had our differences, Mr. Mangold is indeed a talented filmmaker. We'll see what he does with Indiana Jones. But what do you guys think of this? Do you think a James Mangold Swamp Thing could be good? Let's start with you, Odin.
No, and the reason why I say that right off the bat is because I'm still pissed that they canceled the series. Like, the series actually was one that I found entertaining, and the thing I loved most about it was how they were able to combine this amazing work of building this practical suit for the swamp creature, and then also tying in some CGI elements that worked in a very seamless way for most of the instances. And I really honestly think that most studios should hire whatever organization did those costumes and did all that work on anything that they do, like to say, hey, let's not go CGI route, let's go practical route instead, because it looks so much better. But yeah, I mean, the more recent series from 2019 is the one I'm talking about. And I really liked it a lot. It was so sad to hear that when that got canceled. And so, yeah, for this one, for me, I'm like, okay, so they've already said, that this is something he wants to do. It's going to have no connection with the more recent iteration of it right from the show. And so I don't care. And Mangold's recent comments have made me just not care about really much anything he has to do.
Craig, the previous incarnations of Swamp Thing were directed by legendary horror filmmaker Wes Craven. So bringing in someone who kind of revolutionized the comic book movie with Logan in terms of like the maturity level and bringing an ending to a story and stuff like that, do you think Mangold could turn in like a good Swamp Thing film?
So I got to be honest, I'm not super familiar with. I don't have an attachment to Swamp Thing, right? So I really don't have a big say on this one, unfortunately. But I do think that when it comes to Mangold, like Logan and Ford vs Ferrari, did you guys like those movies? I'm just looking through his.
Yeah, they were all right.
Yeah. I thought they were fine. I know he's looks like he's written the new Indiana Jones movie, so that'll be interesting to see how it all kind of comes together with that. Oh Lord. But I don't. I'm always a wait and see guy, right? When it comes to something that has a treasured past and that is an existing IP. Are you guys big fans of the Swamp Thing IP?
Most people aren't big fans of Swamp Thing. Most people don't know or care very much about Swamp Thing. And most of the time, Swamp Thing is like flavor on a comic. Not to everybody. There are fans, but for most people, Swamp Thing is a flavoring. He's a topping. He's not the main course.
So do you think that by him being a focal point of a film, which I'm guessing that's the idea here, is he strong enough to be able to handle his own? I mean, you could obviously write whatever you want. I mean, at the end of the thing, Swamp Thing is what? Swamp Thing is a thing out of the swamp that is probably a bad guy?
I mean, no. You don't actually. Yeah, you don't really know if he's a bad guy or a good guy. Sometimes he's painted as the protagonist. Sometimes he's the antagonist. Sometimes he's
anti-hero type.
Yeah, anti-hero. Sometimes he's Swiss and he's not involved. The thing about Swamp Thing is there's a cool story there, but I actually look at him the same way I look at like the Hulk. There's a cool story, some tragic story about how the guy got his powers. Same with the Hulk. I don't know if he can support his own story. I believe that just like the Hulk, he's probably best included in other people's stories. I don't know if, and it depends on the actor they get to play in the writing. There's ways to do it. But in the comics, his comics to me are not as good as the comics that he's a part of. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
Constantine, when Swamp Thing shows up in a Constantine comic, you're like, oh, this is going to be cool. But I'm not going to go buy Swamp Thing comics. But I own a bunch of Constantine comics. So
sure.
that's the play.
Well, so I guess the question is, why would they want James Mangold, or why would James Mangold or anybody really want to touch an IP that nobody really cares about?
James Mangold, that's what he does, bro. I'm sorry, James Spader, that's what he does.
The idea is that Mangold would come in and elevate the material into something that people would care about. The whole thing about Swamp Thing is that he gets his powers from basically Mother Nature. Like he is the embodiment of the Earth's power.
No. We can see where this is going.
And so like he has like he basically, it's an environmentalist character, right?
Earth.
Wind. Earth, fire, wind, water. And so like the idea here is that if you bring in a writer and director, storyteller of James Mangold's caliber to work with James Gunn and make this character something that people actually care about, then like you launch like a whole thing. And Brian, you are our DC expert on the panel. Like you run a DC centered YouTube channel. And we've talked about Swamp Thing before, but James Gunn's really looking at Swamp Thing as kind of like a window into the more horror aspect of the universe. And if you guys haven't checked out the most recent Swamp Thing TV show that was produced for the DC streaming service, it starts off good, but then they ran out of money and they had to cancel it prematurely. And so like the ending's kind of all over the place. But the look and feel of that show, like there was like the central mystery behind it. It was really, really intriguing.
Good, yeah.
So like, do you think that there's any way where people could make Swamp Thing a character that people care about? I actually think Mike Flanagan would be a good choice to take this character and do something with him, since he had that big run on Netflix with House on Haunted Hill and Bly Manor and stuff like that.
Yeah, it can be done. When I was saying he's a flavor in the comics, I don't feel like again, his most popular appearances have always been other people's stories. So either he hasn't been done correctly in the past, or to his most efficient use, and maybe they can do it better that way. I did watch the series. I thought it was good. I thought it focused a lot more on the low budget stuff that they can focus on, which makes sense. It's a TV show. When it comes to the horror part of DC, I think it's a mistake to use Swamp Thing as your catalyst to bring in the horror elements when you have characters that are already established and loved, like, and I hate to say it again, Constantine, which is where Swamp Thing was introduced initially, right? Or at least to the popular audience. Constantine is already an established character. You already have an actor playing him. It's already a franchise people love. If you want to bring in the horror elements of DC, you should use the head of the Dark Justice League himself. You should use Constantine. Constantine should be your Superman for the horror aspect of DC, and Swamp Thing can be a part of that. But they've chosen to use. It's like they've chosen to use the Hulk as their new as their start to their dark or horror elements of their franchise, versus using Iron Man. They should have been using the headliner, not the color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vader, James Mangold loves our podcast, listens to us every day. leaves comments on our YouTube channel under assumed names. What do you think about him directing a DC Universe movie?
Hey man, he's a big time Hollywood director, right? He's one of the top tier guys out there. So I think them trying to get him attached to one of these upcoming DC projects is probably a smart move on James Gunn's part. You know, it is what it is. I don't have a problem with it. I even hope it's a good movie. I just don't know anything or care about Swamp Thing. I'm questioning James Gunn's strategy about this whole rollout of projects that he's doing. It seems like a weird thing to me. You know,
seems very James Gunny.
We don't have a Wonder Woman movie coming out, but we can watch Swamp Thing and Squirrel Boy or something.
Right. Like, what?
Squirrel Girl.
You know, but yeah, I don't get it. But you know, I'm looking forward to somebody tickling Mr. Mangold's little pissed off nerve, and I hope he spurgs out again soon on Twitter again over Indiana Jones, because that shit show coming down pretty soon is going to be an absolute blast.
He's calmed down a lot.
Oh, he's but for now, I'm predicting a spurg at any day. Any day he's gonna tweak out.
Well, I'll say this: you guys brought up a real interesting point about Swamp Thing and the idea of elevating him. Right? When you look at characters like in Marvel, you look at someone like Star-Lord or Rocket Raccoon or any of the Guardians of the Galaxy as a whole. You go, or Ant-Man. Who cared about Ant-Man? Nobody. Right? Nobody cared about any of these characters, and all of a sudden,
man, bro. No,
well, sorry, you're the one. But it's one of those things where you look back and those characters have been elevated to a point to where now they're part of regular pop culture. So I can see what you're saying about if they put some time, money, and a proper director behind it, which it sounds like it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens. But like I said, I never cared about Star-Lord ever, but now I like his music choices. So
yeah,
that's true.
All right, everyone. So we had a lot to talk about today. We didn't get to everything we had on the agenda, but the stuff that we did get to was a lot of fun to discuss. We're going to get out of here now, so I'm going to let the panel give us some final thoughts and where they can find out more. Odin, where can people find out more about you? And do you have any final thoughts on the topics we covered today?
Yeah, I guess the general final thoughts was it was a pretty gay week.
It really was.
Because not only did you have, of course, the episode of Last of Us, but then also I had the misfortune of going to see the new M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie, where it features two dads. So it was like, oh, okay, I'm getting double it this week. But anyway, you can check me out over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, and on Locals live stream tonight, 7 p.m. Still figuring out topics, but I'm sure some of these things that we've talked about today will be available. And thank you as always for having me on the show.
Yes, and Stuttering Craig, thank you so much for coming on our little corner of the internet and talking about some very charged topics with us today. We appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you, and do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure to say hi to new audiences. You guys can find me over at youtube.com/stutteringcraig. Hence the link down below. I also have a channel called Craig Talks News. Both are going to be seeing pretty big revamps in the next 10 days or so. Going to be returning to a podcast I used to do back in the old Screw Attack days called Side Scrollers. People are pretty jazzed up about it. It's going to be a daily show Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to whenever it ends. And so it'll be a good daily place for people to hang out, gaming and entertainment and all sorts of fun stuff with a bunch of good folks. So find me over at youtube.com/stutteringcraig. You can follow me on Twitter. And, Backyard TARDIS, thanks for the suggestion to come in and talk to these folks.
And that's 11 a.m. Central Time, correct?
Yes.
So that's 9 a.m. Pacific, and I believe 12 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, you're here, you're queer. Why don't you let people know where they can find out more about you, and any final thoughts?
Of course, you can find me on the typical spots, youtube.com/thepopcast. Our live show is youtube.com/thepopcast live. So we have two podcast channels. We have Popcast Prime. That's the big channel where we put all of our little docs. And then our live channel is Popcast Live. And then we have a newish channel called DC Unleashed, where Shane is allowing me to let my freak flag fly on everything DC, because at one point he's like, look, I like DC movies, but like you are just, there's too many nerds in this space that I'm not on the same level with. So you need to get some people to do your own show. So we're going to be doing a DC show on Sundays with guys that are a little sweatier when it comes to DC than Shane is, because he's not sweaty enough for the DC audience.
And you guys are also doing a Monday live stream coming up
Yes,
soon.
yes, you guys are gonna be part of that. Yes, we're gonna be doing a Monday. So we're gonna be calling it Raw Rant. It's gonna be a really cool thing. There'll be more information coming out, but starting on, I think it's the 12th or the 13th, we're gonna be doing an 8-panel. So our version of our sweaty version of Friday Night Tights, but on Monday.
And
Like
Alex,
ours isn't sweaty.
Yeah, Alex from the Salty Nerd podcast will actually be able to make that, since he isn't working on Monday nights.
Finally
So,
gonna get to do the stream with Alex. I'm not even
yes.
gonna pretend like we chose Monday, because we knew Alex would be available.
All right, Matt Vader 74. Any final thoughts? And why don't you tell people what we got going on Tuesdays nowadays?
On Tuesdays is a recording day in the studio where we do most of our content. But after we're done with that, we do a live stream for about an hour and a half, 2 hours after our recording session, and it's just like this one, except it's not as I don't know, controversial. I don't know. We don't talk about as heavy as topics on there, but it's just another way for us to interact and be in touch with the people who like our show. And we love everybody who does like and love our show, and we're hoping to be able to get some of those people on that show with us, and that's going to evolve and change as we go. And getting Alex and Jude in the live stream mode is always kind of fun, and it's going to grow and change as we go, and it's super fun. I think we got a name for it yet. Table Salt Tuesdays.
Table Salt Tuesdays.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna go with. So that's kind of fun. We just dropped our review of Superman from 1978 a couple days ago.
Yesterday.
Got a lot of good. Was it yesterday? Is Saturday? Oh, it's Saturday. We got some crazy takes on there. We're all over the place on whether we like that movie, and we're hearing about it in the chat. And next week, I believe we're dropping Batman 89, the Michael Keaton one. So we'll see how that goes as well. So yeah, that's it. That's what we got going on.
And that Table Salt Tuesday starts at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is I believe 4 p.m. Eastern, something like that. So if you guys want to join us for that, those are the times we're doing it. Thank you all so much for showing up, everyone in the chat. We really appreciate your participation. And for those of you who gave us money during the stream, we really appreciate you guys. Whiskey Jack, Astro Nerd Boy, Gavin Blackburn, Scotty Dub, Mexican Iron Man, and Denny Wright. Thank you all so much for your support. It means a lot to us. We really do appreciate it. And as always, everyone, join us next Saturday, same salty time, same salty channel, for yet another episode of Salty Saturday Mornings. Until then, I am Matthew Kadish, your friendly neighborhood podcast producer, saying, stay salty, my friends.